And so today, Nick from Puppet Labs, who's the IT manager at Puppet Labs, is going to come and explain how, in a super fast-growing company, they've implemented JIRA Service Desk and the difference it's making for them. So if you want to join me in welcoming Nick to the stage. Thank you, Nick.
Hey, yeah. Thank you. Hey, everybody. How's it going? I'm gonna copy Alex from Twitter here and take a picture of all of you from up here, so I can pretend that I'm a much bigger deal than I am. It's good for everybody, right? So, sorry for the slightly erroneous, I guess, title of my talk. I didn't use the nice marketing name for my talk in my slide deck here. But my name's Nick Cunningham. I'm the IT manager, like Christoph said, at Puppet Labs. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit today about kind of how we rolled out Service Desk at Puppet Labs and sort of what our process was. If you aren't familiar with Puppet Labs, I don't have a nice slide that says anything about that, but we are a company that makes automation software to help system administrators deploy their infrastructure and all the apps and services that run on them. And there's lots and lots of cool stuff that Puppet Labs is doing. You can find out in a couple weeks at PuppetConf, San Francisco. Everybody should go. And our community is doing lots of cool things too. There's lots of great modules on the Puppet Forge for people deploying their infrastructure, trying to talk our operations team into putting all of our great modules that we use to deploy our Atlassian stack up there, but they're not there yet. So very sorry for anyone else running JIRA server that uses Puppet. But what are we going to talk about? So I have a few bullet points, I guess, just to kind of generally outline what we're going to do. We'll start talking about why not just use JIRA. We started basically using JIRA with our operations team, and so I'll talk a little bit about why the way that we were using JIRA sort of led us to pursue other help desk options. Assuming that I make a good case for why we should be using a proper help desk tool, we'll talk about why Service Desk. Why are we using Service Desk in particular? Because there's lots of other options. We'll move on and talk a little bit about our planning process. I'll have a link up for the planning doc that we used for actually deciding what was going to go into the configuration of our Service Desk. And then we'll talk about rollout. I have some nice graphs that show, kind of the impact that we saw once we deployed JIRA Service Desk to our teams. And then we'll talk about expansion. I'm sure you've heard enough about all the other teams that aren't IT that are using JIRA Service Desk, but we'll talk a little bit more about that so that you can hear how we're expanding that. So that's about it. Quick question, how many people are actually using JIRA Service Desk right now? Okay, so that's probably good, because this is kind of geared to sort of introduce you to it a little bit. So we'll start with why not use JIRA. Prior to us moving to JIRA Service Desk, we had a shared project with our operations team. And our operations team at Puppet Labs is very, very tight with our IT team. Just 18 months ago, we didn't actually have sort of proper dedicated help desk people. That's actually when I started at Puppet. And so we ended up working really, really closely with operations to sort of develop what help desk looked like at Puppet Labs. Having the shared project, though, was really good, but also had a lot of things that were not as good. As the manager of that team, I really liked seeing that my team could work with the operations team and kind of see and have a little more insight into what they were working on. We really want the people that are working in desktop support to have a nice, clear path that they can kind of pursue things that are more interesting and complex. And having them have a little more insight into those tickets was really great for that. On the other side, this means that our ops team, by sharing that project, is seeing all of these other help desk tickets kind of mixed in with all of the work that they're doing. So there's these longer-lived tickets that belong to sprints and belong to longer-lived tasks that they are going to be doing for project work. And our help desk team, as much as they were trying to be helpful, were constantly pinging our operations owners to say, hey, can we get this ticket closed out? Because we really care about metrics and getting those tickets closed. And so this was a bit of a harassment for our operations team, which wasn't exactly great. But all of this doesn't mean we shouldn't use JIRA, right? It was just probably a bad idea for those two projects to be shared. So we could just use our own project, right? And so we did. We set up a really, really basic project to do some testing on, trimmed down a bunch of the components that didn't make any sense to users so that the lists that would be generated when they filled out forms made more sense to them. But try as much as we could, making those screens as simple as we could. We still had errors with users filling out tickets erroneously and miscategorizing and things like that. So we'll take sort of a before example here of a VPN request. Unlike the dear folks at Atlassian, like they said yesterday, we don't have a completely automated VPN request process yet for our users. So the actual process for a user kind of looked like this. So in comes, Mr. Manager here with his tie, and he needs VPN access. So he goes to our help desk portal, and he fills out this ticket. Obviously, him not having VPN is an incident. He remembers to use the component of VPN, but he chooses priority of blocker because he's really sure that he needs access right now. So immediately after that, one of our wonderful help desk technicians comes rushing in because they get an alert in HipChat that an incident level ticket with a blocker priority has been filed. So they come in, they open up the ticket, and they're kind of pissed because now they've been yanked out of the workflow that they were doing before to deal with this just wrongfully filed ticket. It wasn't actually the right thing for him to fill out, but really honestly, there was no way for him to know that. So they go in and they recategorize his issue as a help desk ticket. They drop his priority back to normal, and they go back to whatever they were working on before, a little more grizzled. But yeah, so this is obviously not ideal for our help desk teams because they're wasting a bunch of time being interrupted from the work that they're doing, and our users are looking at this interaction, and if that ticket came in and you were a user and you see someone come in, change your ticket, and then bail, it just feels like we're being really pedantic about the way tickets are filed, and like we're not really interested in helping them. And if there's one way that will get you into deep trouble with your end users, it's going to be that they don't trust that you actually want to help them. So why service desk, though? We could have trained all of our end users better on how to file tickets. I do an IT orientation for all of our new employees, of which there are many, and we walk them through the process of filling out tickets. So they should be able to remember some of this. Fortunately, our orientation is halfway through their first day, and their brain is completely full of new information at this point, so they've probably checked out long before I even started talking to them, let alone by the time I get to telling them how to do help desk tickets. But in addition to having to sanitize all this data, because people would miscategorize these things and they would assign tickets to themselves. I don't know why people assign tickets to themselves, but they do. There's a little red star there. They must have thought it was important. But in addition to all of this, all of our help desk technicians were having to distribute these shared JQL queries that I was giving them to try to see what tickets were incoming. And so a lot of them were customizing these queries because they didn't like to work the way that I wanted them to work. They thought that they should prioritize maybe tickets just on how old they were instead of priority. Maybe they didn't think that people were filling out priority correctly, so they would just ignore that field altogether. And I was having to generate a bunch of reports manually, and I was using the JIRA Python API tool to write these little tools to generate reports for myself, which could have been better. But in the end, I can train our help desk team. Our new employees, as well as our existing employees, are really receptive when we ask them to change their behavior around filing tickets. And I have manager in my title, so it's basically my job to run reports. So really, this shouldn't be that bad. But then we looked at this. This is Puppet Labs over the last 18 months. We went from having around 100 people when I started to, I think at last count, about 325 people. So we have these new hires coming in, and they're coming in so quickly that there's really no way that we knew we would be able to maintain this training for all of these users. There's me and I think 3 other help desk technicians right now at our company, and keeping up on all the things that we would need to do to make sure users are filing this correctly would probably detract from our ability to actually properly sanitize these tickets they were erroneously filing. But in the end, all of those erroneously categorized tickets, as frustrating as they were, weren't exactly surprising. Because if you were an end user, this is what it looked like for you. And so people would look at this and they'd be like, well, I filled out everything with a red star, I guess I'm good. And away that ticket would go. And some ticket with no description, no clarification to what work actually needed to be done, would be dumped into the bottom of the queue, only to be touched and recategorized once we got around to it. But so why specifically service desk, though? All of this up till now means that we just need to have a proper help desk tool. We don't specifically need JIRA Service Desk. We looked at a bunch of other options. I looked at Zendesk. We looked at desk.com from Salesforce, as we have smaller installations of both of those things at the company already. But in the end, we landed on Service Desk for a couple reasons. The biggest one was that we were completely drowning in tickets. All of this work we were having to do trying to sort of make up for customer error was causing our backlog to get longer and longer. And so we needed a new solution quickly. Our deployment of Service Desk from the point where I first watched the video from last summit explaining what Service Desk was, all the way up to our deployment was only about 6 weeks, which is pretty remarkable, especially including factoring in that one of those weeks was actually after we had deployed Service Desk, and were taking feedback from users. The next thing was that the experience of our end user was incredibly important. We knew that the biggest pain that we were experiencing was because our end users were having trouble properly filing tickets easily. And we needed to get better about reporting for staffing and performance metrics. I knew that I was going to need new people eventually, but without some really solid reporting, I didn't have a way to really communicate that. All right, so I've landed on Service Desk. We've decided to start planning. Here is my beautiful, terrible Google Doc spreadsheet that is our planning. And there's a really non-human parsable URL up there where you can download it. Really, the most important thing to take away from the planning thing here is that you just need to write things down. Configuring JIRA Service Desk is really, really easy, but there's really no reason for you to not have a copy of what your initial deployment is going to look like written down. I hope that I've made it relatively easy with the doc that I've made available here. But really, if you just want to use it to criticize my spreadsheet skills, that's fine too. So planning phase 2 was us deploying it into a dev instance. Like I said, we use JIRA Server at Puppet Labs, and our operations team has fantastic Puppet modules and manifests that we use to deploy our Atlassian stack. So for us, setting up dev instances is really easy. Anytime that we need to make a large change to JIRA, we can spool up another instance, make those changes in there, and see what sort of impact that they'll have. And it's really nice to be able to blow things away, test out new custom fields without irritating and agitating your JIRA admins. If you are using hosted JIRA or you can't spin up a dev instance because you're not as DevOps as Puppet Labs is, just make sure that you lock those permissions down so that people don't start filing tickets before you're ready. This would be a very, very easy mistake to make, and you could wind up in quite a bit of trouble trying to distribute your help desk team across their existing system and the new system that you're working on doing a proof of concept for. All right, so we've planned. We've done our testing in a dev instance. We've made sure that all of our workflows and custom fields have not completely enraged our JIRA admins, and we haven't modified other people's custom fields. We're good to go. When we deployed Service Desk, I know some people have talked about how they rolled it out slowly to some different parts of the company, but we just sent the announcement email out to the whole company and made the project live immediately. This might not be the best decision for you, so I would encourage you to approach that decision with caution. At Puppet Labs, we like to live dangerously, and I felt pretty good about our planning process, so we just decided to go for it. And really, the best way for us to show how great it was to use Service Desk is to kind of return to our VPN request example. So in comes our guy. He's asking for VPN access again, but now instead of being given this giant form with a bunch of fields that don't make any sense to him, he's presented with this. This is a very nice human-readable form for him. He's got help text along the side there explaining either what a good example of something to put into that field. Not a lot of people know how to do a summary somehow. Or it'll give him quick questions that elaborate on what needs to go in there. And at the bottom here, if you can see it, we even have links to the tool for him to generate his certificate signing request for VPN as well. So the process for him is really great. Furthermore, the process for us is really great because now after this ticket gets filed, we have these wonderful JIRA robots. Everybody loves talking about JIRA robots right now. And they come in and they categorize this exactly how we want it to. They give VPN requests the correct priority, they drop it into the right queue, they give it the correct component, and everything is ready to go. So when we're ready to automate, all the information is already there and is already automatically generated for us. So this is great for the end user, right? But the better thing is that it looks like this for our help desk technicians. So they get to see exactly how many of different types of tickets exist for all the different types of things that they have to do. This is a screenshot from quite a while ago. We've done quite a bit of reconfiguring all of these custom queues since then. But really, the best part about it is that we can do those configurations really whenever we want. If I feel like our team isn't working effectively because a queue doesn't match the type of workflow that we want to have, I can just click on those queues and edit them immediately. And instantly, as soon as I've saved, every desktop technician that we have in our company is looking at that new refreshed queue. And as far as they're concerned, it's still the same queue for them to work from. People can't miss tickets because they have their queues chosen for them, and nobody has me on their back for missing tickets that fell between the cracks. But you probably want to see actual results. So I went through and pulled 4 months of data from before we deployed Service Desk, and I pulled the 4 or 5-ish months of data after we deployed Service Desk and tried to average those. So I averaged those to see how many tickets we were creating, expecting for there to be something. And I found this, that the amount of tickets we had dropped a measly 3%, which created tickets dropping is not necessarily bad. I kind of expected it to go up, but it's not a very flashy graphic. It doesn't feel very good. But then I pulled this data, and this data right here is sort of a testament to how great the reporting is in JIRA anyways, because if any of you have gone through and scraped discussion lists to try to find out how many emails to your team were for help versus how many of them were some random person emailing your team to alert them of something completely not work-related, it's a huge pain. We use Google Apps, and we have nice archives of all of our mailing lists, but boy, scraping that data is not a lot of fun. But so we see this. The number of inbound email tickets is dropping dramatically month over month after we have deployed Service Desk. And our reaction is that it's working. It's working. I'm just going to leave this up here for a couple minutes. You guys can see that. All right, so we're feeling a little bit better now. We move on, and we decide to start looking at the next metric. So how many tickets are we actually resolving? You know, a slight drop in created tickets is great and everything, but if we aren't actually resolving more tickets, that doesn't really help us, and it doesn't really make as good of a case for us deploying Service Desk. Oh, I can already see that this graph is not going to look good for you, and I'm sorry. But I know what the metrics are here, and if you look at those numbers, it means that we had an increase of almost 70% in the number of resolved tickets that we were seeing. Now, this is really, really awesome, and I understand that this is not sustainable, but really, outpacing our created tickets with resolved tickets is only not sustainable because eventually we could run out of tickets. Now, I know that that's not actually probably going to happen, and that as we progress our usage of Service Desk, the number of created tickets is likely to spike pretty significantly. And even in the past couple weeks that aren't in all of these reports, we've seen an uptick in this. But in a word, basically, all of our results mean booyah, Service Desk. So our rollout went really, really smoothly, almost alarmingly so. Our operations team was incredibly helpful keeping everything up to date, making sure that we had the newest copies of these plugins, and the nice folks at Atlassian were very responsive to any tickets that we had for issues that we had with Service Desk along the way. Expansion-wise, though, we rolled out Service Desk, like I said, 4 or 5 months ago, just to our help desk team, just for IT. And really, before I even knew it, we had 3 or 4 other Service Desks that were deployed in the company because other JIRA admins and other departments had found that there was a plugin called Service Desk and started playing with it. One of my favorite ones was that the operations team, the very team that we had just cleaved our project from, has now deployed a Service Desk for their tasks. So they're able to see all of the advantage of automatically categorizing these tickets and automatically having them filtered into the correct places. Our quality engineering team, I think, is also looking at using Service Desk, and they're doing some cool stuff with that. But it wouldn't be a Service Desk talk without saying that our HR and finance teams are also looking into JIRA Service Desk to make their process a little bit easier as well. So all of this expansion to other teams is really great and everything, but the real expansion we saw in IT was that we could iterate on our customer portal. So when we first started out, this is what our customer portal looked like. We tried to really, really trim it down and not do too much categorization. But what happened was that we slowly started adding more and more things for people to fill out. We had put everything into the general group, which is one of the default groups that it gives you. And that just meant that there was this giant list of things for users to choose from, which kind of put us a little bit back into the same situation we had before. Now, instead of users manually choosing the wrong thing by miscategorizing their tickets, they were just choosing the wrong one from a really nice looking list. And so we had users that were like, I had a video call problem, I should just hit phones because that feels like something that's close enough. So we still had some problems there. Since then, we've done this. This is actually also a slightly out-of-date version of our customer portal. But now we are using the groups. So we have the ability to break down accounts and access versus inventory requests, phone requests, whether they're an outage or whether they're somebody requesting additional access or they just forgot what their number is, are all now separate things. And that's basically it. We had it rolled out in about 6 weeks, and we started seeing benefits almost immediately. The end users loved having a customer portal that made more sense to them than the tickets they were filing before. Our technicians liked that they weren't wasting time recategorizing tickets that people had filled out. And they especially liked that I wasn't getting on them for missing tickets because they were all using the same queue. Our management and leadership, including myself, really loved having SLAs that gave us really nice quantitative metrics that we really didn't have to do any work to actually get. And we loved that we could actually see trends and track those metrics and reports. Thanks for coming and just learning a little bit about what we did with Service Desk at Puppet. If you have questions, you can ask them on the bit.ly link there. You're welcome to email me. My email was up there a second ago. It's just cunningham@puppetlabs.com. Or you can find me on Twitter as well. Let's see, questions. I mentioned plugins. Which plugins are we using with Service Desk? God, did I mention plugins? Are we using plugins with Service Desk? I don't think we're actually using plugins. I'm so sorry if I said that, because that was very, very not true. I did go to the Extending Service Desk talk this morning next door, and it was really good, and we're really excited to do all sorts of cool things with that. And talking to all the vendors up in the booth area has been really cool, and we found certainly a few things we're going to do there, but I don't think we're using anything now. This is flashing at me, which is probably bad, too. Do we have any more questions? Does anybody hand raise a question? I don't know if we have time. Christoph's got the microphone, so we're probably out of time. So you have. You had a download on the page. Walk me through. Oh yeah, let me see here. Let me drop this navigator back here just so that link can be up here. This one? Yeah. I don't know if do you guys share slide decks too?
We will share the slides. Yeah, so you will be able to get that after Summit. We're going to send an email to everyone that attended, and all the decks will be shared.
Great.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, everybody.